The ring was for a size 6 finger. Iris and Nduka had worn a size 8 since she was 19 years old. Cameron knew this. He had measured her finger himself 3 years ago, laughing as he wrapped the little paper strip around her knuckle, promising that one day he would replace it with something real, something worthy of everything she had given him. She stood in his home office, the drawer still open, the receipt trembling slightly in her hand. Not from emotion. From the air conditioning vent above his desk, blowing directly down onto the paper. Iris noticed details like that. She had always noticed details. It was why she was good at her job, good at keeping their life organized, good at being the kind of woman Cameron needed while he built himself into the man he was becoming. The receipt was from a jeweler she had never heard of. Ashford Lane. The kind of name that sounded old and expensive, the kind of place that didn't advertise because it didn't need to. The ring was platinum. The center stone was 2 carats. The total was more than she made in 4 months of cleaning teeth and pretending to care about flossing habits. Size 6. Iris placed the receipt back exactly where she found it, aligned with the edge of the folder beneath it. She closed the drawer slowly, listening for the click that meant it had settled properly. Cameron was particular about his things. He would notice if something was out of place. She stood in the center of his office and breathed. 7 years. She had given him 7 years. She had given him her savings, her credit score, her 20s, her plans. She had deferred the nursing program she'd wanted because someone needed to work while he studied. She had smiled at firm dinners where partners' wives looked through her like she was furniture. She had held him when he failed the bar exam the first time, the second time, told him the third time was the charm and meant it. She had believed they were building something together. Iris walked out of the office, closed the door behind her, and went to start dinner. She didn't confront him that night. Cameron came home late, smelling like the Italian place they used to go to when he got good news. He kissed her cheek and said the partners had taken him out to celebrate a case settlement. Big win. Career-defining. She smiled and said she was proud of him, and she had always been proud of him. That was the problem. Pride had made her blind. After dinner, after he fell asleep with his hand on her hip like everything was normal, Iris lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling. She thought about the receipt. She thought about size 6. She thought about all the times in the past few months when something had felt slightly off. A text he turned his phone to hide, a dinner that ran too late, a new gym routine that made him leaner and more careful about his appearance. She had noticed. She had always noticed. She had simply chosen not to assemble the pieces into a picture she didn't want to see. Now she couldn't unsee it. The next morning, while Cameron was in the shower, Iris went back to his office. She wasn't looking for the ring receipt this time. She was looking for context. She found it. The apartment lease was in a folder labeled Investment Properties. The address was in Buckhead, the kind of neighborhood where Cameron had always said they would live, someday when we've made it. The lease was in his name only. The monthly rent was 3 times their current mortgage. The move-in date was 6 weeks ago. Iris photographed the lease with her phone, then kept looking. The credit card statements were in another folder. She recognized most of the charges: restaurants, dry cleaning, the gym. But there were others she didn't recognize. A spa she had never been to. A boutique in Lenox Square. Flowers delivered weekly to an address that wasn't theirs. She photographed everything. At the bottom of the drawer, beneath the folders, she found his iPad. Cameron had left it there months ago, claiming he never used it anymore. But when Iris opened it, she found it synced to his messages. Hundreds of them stretching back over a year. Her name was Sloan. The messages started professional, case notes, scheduling, the usual clipped exchanges between colleagues. Then they warmed. Then they ignited. Pet names appeared. Plans materialized. A trip to Savannah that Cameron had told Iris was a conference. A weekend in Charleston that he had called a partner's retreat. Iris scrolled until she found the message that stopped her breathing. She's a chapter that's closing. You're the rest of the book. The timestamp was 3 weeks ago. The same week Cameron had surprised her with flowers and told her he wanted to take her somewhere special for their anniversary. Iris set the iPad down exactly where she had found it. She closed the drawer. She walked to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and sat on the toilet lid with the water running so no one could hear her if she made a sound. She didn't cry. She calculated. Delia answered on the second ring, even though it was nearly midnight. "What's wrong?" her sister asked immediately. Delia had always been able to read Iris, even through a phone line, even across the city, even when Iris was trying her hardest to sound normal. "I need to tell you something," Iris said. "And I need you to listen before you react." She told her everything. The receipt. The apartment. The messages. The woman named Sloan. The phrase that kept echoing in her head, a chapter that's closing. When she finished, the line was silent for a long moment. I'm coming over, Delia said. No, Iris. He's asleep. If you come over now, he'll know something is wrong. I need him to not know. Not yet. Delia exhaled slowly. Iris could picture her sister pacing her small living room, phone pressed to her ear, wanting to drive across Atlanta and burn something down. What are you going to do? Delia asked finally. I don't know yet. You should confront him. Tonight. Wake him up and what? Iris interrupted softly. He's a lawyer, Delia. A good one. If I confront him now, he'll explain. He'll minimize. He'll find a way to make me feel crazy for snooping, and then he'll spend the next 6 months hiding everything better. I can't give him that chance. So what, you just pretend everything is fine? Iris looked at the bedroom door, still closed, Cameron still sleeping peacefully on the other side. For now, she said. Yes. I don't understand how you can be this calm. I'm not calm, Iris said. I'm clear. There's a difference. The next few days moved strangely, like time had developed a stutter. Iris went to work. She cleaned teeth. She smiled at patients and reminded them about their 6-month checkups. She came home and made dinner and asked Cameron about his day and listened to him talk about cases and partners and the trajectory of his career. She watched him. She had always watched him, but now she watched differently. She noticed the way he angled his phone away when texts came in. She noticed the extra care he took with his appearance, the new cologne, the way he checked his reflection in every surface. She noticed that he had stopped touching her casually, no hand on her back when they passed in the kitchen, no kiss on the forehead when he left for work. He was already leaving. He was just doing it slowly, so slowly that she was supposed to not notice until it was done. On Thursday evening, Iris sat at the kitchen table with her laptop open, pretending to browse recipes while Cameron watched basketball in the living room. She logged into their shared bank account and began scrolling. The transactions told their own story. Regular transfers to an account she didn't recognize, small enough to seem unremarkable, 200 here, 500 there, but consistent. Over the past year, nearly $30,000 had been quietly siphoned away. There were also payments to unfamiliar vendors. A property management company. An interior designer. Someone named D. Mullins, recurring monthly, listed simply as consulting. Iris took screenshots of everything. When Cameron came to bed that night, he pulled her close and murmured that he loved her. His breath was warm against her neck. His hand was familiar on her hip. For one terrible moment, Iris almost believed it was real. Almost let herself sink into the comfort of pretending. Then she remembered, a chapter that's closing. She lay still until his breathing deepened, then carefully extracted herself from his arms. In the bathroom, door locked, she sat on the edge of the tub and reviewed the screenshots on her phone. $30,000. An apartment in Buckhead. A woman named Sloan. A ring that didn't fit her finger. 7 years of her life, and this was what she had to show for it. No, that wasn't right. 7 years of her life, and this was what he had stolen from it. There was a difference there too, and Iris was beginning to understand what it was. She called Delia the next afternoon from the parking lot of the dental office where she worked. I need a lawyer, Iris said. Divorce lawyer? We're not married. The words hung in the air. Iris had never minded before, had told herself it didn't matter, that the commitment was real even without the paper, that Cameron was building his career and they would get to it eventually. Now she understood what that delay had really meant. Unmarried meant unprotected. Unmarried meant he could walk away and owe her nothing. Then what kind of lawyer? Delia asked. I don't know. Someone who handles situations like this. Finances. Assets. Someone who knows how to fight people who hide things. Delia was quiet for a moment. I know someone. Client of mine went through something similar a few years ago. Her lawyer was brutal. In a good way. Give me the name. Monica Vance. She's not warm, Iris. She's not going to hold your hand. I don't need hand-holding. I need to know what I'm entitled to and how to get it. Delia texted her the contact information. Iris stared at the name for a long time before saving it. That evening, while Cameron worked late, or claimed to, Iris sat alone in their living room and made a list. Every financial contribution she had made over 7 years. Every loan she had co-signed. Every bill she had paid while he was in law school, studying for the bar, building his reputation. Every time she had chosen his future over her own. The list filled 3 pages. She had never thought of it as keeping score. She had thought of it as partnership. Now she understood that partnership required 2 people who were both keeping track. not to hold against each other but to ensure that the balance remained fair. Cameron had stopped keeping track a long time ago. Or maybe he had never started. Iris folded the list and placed it in her purse, next to Monica Vance's phone number. Then she went to bed and pretended to be asleep when Cameron finally came home at midnight, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers. Monica Vance's office was on the 17th floor of a building in Midtown, all glass and steel and the kind of quiet that came from expensive soundproofing. Iris had taken a half day from work, telling Cameron she had a dentist appointment of her own. He hadn't asked questions. He rarely asked questions anymore. Monica was exactly as Delia had described. Not warm, not sympathetic, not interested in the emotional dimensions of Iris's situation. She was a small woman with close-cropped gray hair and reading glasses that she peered over rather than through. She listened to Iris's story without interruption, making occasional notes on a legal pad. When Iris finished, Monica set down her pen. "You're not married," she said. "No. That complicates things. In Georgia, unmarried partners have very few automatic protections. No equitable distribution. No alimony. Nothing that a married spouse would be entitled to." Iris felt her stomach tighten. "So I have nothing." "I didn't say that." Monica leaned back in her chair. "You have nothing automatic. But you may have claims. If you contributed to his education, his career, his assets. And if you can document that contribution, there are legal theories we can pursue. Unjust enrichment. Constructive trust. Promissory estoppel, if he made specific promises about your future that induced you to sacrifice. He promised we were building a life together. Can you prove it?" Iris thought about the conversations, the late nights, the reassurances. None of it was in writing. None of it would hold up in a courtroom. "I can prove what I paid for," she said finally. "I have records. Bank statements. The loans I co-signed are in both our names." Monica nodded slowly. "That's a start. What else?" "He's been hiding money. Transferring funds to accounts I didn't know about. There's an apartment I never knew existed. Another woman he's planning to marry." For the first time, something flickered across Monica's face. Not sympathy but interest. "How do you know about the hidden accounts?" "We have shared access to our main accounts. I saw the transfers. I also found documents in his office. Lease agreements, credit card statements." "Did you take anything?" "No. I photographed them." Monica's expression shifted slightly. Approval, Iris realized. Quiet, professional approval. Good. That was smart. Taking originals could have been problematic. Photographs of documents you had legitimate access to, that's different. "What do I do now?" Monica picked up her pen again. "Now you build a case. I'm going to refer you to a forensic accountant named Raymond Watts. He's expensive, but he's the best at tracing hidden assets. You're going to document everything, every contribution you made, every transfer he made, every promise you can corroborate. And you're going to keep your mouth shut." "Meaning?" "Meaning you don't confront him. You don't hint. You don't change your behavior in any way that suggests you know what he's doing. The moment he realizes you're onto him, he'll start destroying evidence and hiding things more carefully. Right now, he thinks he's smarter than you. That's your advantage. Don't waste it." Iris nodded slowly. "How long?" "How long for what? How long do I have to pretend everything is normal?" Monica studied her for a long moment. "As long as it takes to protect yourself. Can you do that?" Iris thought about 7 years of smiling at firm dinners. 7 years of pretending his colleagues' condescension didn't sting. 7 years of putting her own needs second and calling it love. "Yes," she said. "I can do that." Raymond Watts was a heavy-set man in his 60s with the demeanor of someone who had spent decades watching people try to hide money and finding it anyway. He met Iris at a coffee shop far from her neighborhood, reviewed the screenshots she had taken, and nodded with the same quiet approval Monica had shown. "He's not sophisticated about this," Raymond said. "The transfers are too regular, too predictable. He's relying on the assumption that you won't look, not on any actual concealment strategy." "What does that mean for me?" "It means once we have subpoena power, we'll find everything. The apartment, the accounts, whatever else he's built. People who hide money badly always hide more than they think they're hiding." "How do we get subpoena power?" "Your attorney files suit. Then discovery opens. Then we go fishing." He smiled slightly. "I like fishing." Iris spent the next hour walking Raymond through every financial entanglement she could remember. The student loans she had co-signed when Cameron's credit was too damaged to qualify a loan. The credit cards she had maxed out covering their living expenses while he studied. The car she had bought that he drove to work every day while she took the bus. The down payment on their current house, which had come from her savings that had taken her 6 years to accumulate. Raymond took meticulous notes. "One more question," he said when they finished. "Do you know Derek Mullins?" Iris frowned. The name came up in the bank transfers. Consulting fees. "Derek Mullins is a financial advisor. Went to college with your partner, if my preliminary research is correct. He specializes in, let's say, creative asset structuring." "What does that mean?" "It means he helps people move money in ways that are technically legal but designed to be hard to trace. He's good at it but not good enough. And in my experience, people like Derek Mullins have one primary loyalty: themselves. When things get uncomfortable, they tend to cooperate rather quickly." Iris absorbed this. Another piece of the puzzle. Another person Cameron had trusted to help him disappear her from his life. "What do you need from me?" she asked. "Time, documentation, and patience. Can you give me those things?" "Yes." Raymond nodded and closed his notebook. "Then we'll nail him." That night, Iris came home to find Cameron in an unusually good mood. He had picked up Thai food from her favorite restaurant. He had opened a bottle of wine. He asked about her day and actually seemed to listen to her answer. She understood what this was. Performance, guilt management. The kind of attentiveness that men offered when they were doing something wrong and needed to convince themselves they were still good people. She played along. "I was thinking," Cameron said over dinner, "that you've been working so hard lately. You deserve a break." "A break?" "Yeah, like a trip or something. When's the last time you visited your aunt in South Carolina? You always say you should go see her more." Iris kept her face neutral, but inside something clicked. He was planting seeds, giving her a reason to be away, creating space for whatever he was planning. "Aunt Constance has been having some health issues," Iris said carefully. "I probably should go check on her." "Exactly. You should go. Stay as long as you need. I can handle things here." "I bet you can," Iris thought. "That's sweet of you," she said aloud. "Let me think about it." Cameron reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "I just want you to be happy. You know that, right?" "I know." That night, after he fell asleep, Iris went to the bathroom and sat on the edge of the tub again. Her thinking place. Her planning place. He wanted her gone. That meant he was getting ready to move, to act, to transition into the new life he was building. If she left, she would lose visibility into what he was doing. But if she left strategically, if she positioned the absence correctly, she might actually gain something more valuable. She could watch from a distance. She could let him get comfortable. She could let him make the kinds of mistakes people make when they think no one is looking. Iris thought about Monica's words. "He thinks he's smarter than you. That's your advantage." She was beginning to understand how to use it. The next morning, Iris called Delia. "I need your help," she said. "Anything." "Cameron wants me to take a trip. Visit Aunt Constance." "Since when does Cameron care about Aunt Constance?" "Since he needs me out of the way." Delia was quiet for a moment. "So what's the plan?" "I'm going to go. Or at least, I'm going to make him think I've gone. I need a place to stay that isn't too far away, somewhere I can be close enough to watch but far enough that he won't accidentally run into me. I have a friend with a rental property in Decatur. She owes me a favor." "Perfect." "Iris, are you sure about this?" "Staying close, watching him, that sounds like torture." "It's not torture. It's intelligence gathering." Delia sighed. "You sound like a spy." "Maybe I am. Maybe that's what you become when someone tries to erase you." Iris spent the next few days preparing. She packed a suitcase with enough clothes for an extended stay. She arranged for a coworker to cover her shifts at the dental office. A family emergency, she explained, vague enough to discourage questions. She transferred a small amount of money into a personal account Cameron didn't know about, just enough for expenses. She also met with Monica Vance again. "You're sure about this?" Monica asked. "He's going to make mistakes while I'm gone. Bigger ones. I want to document them. There's a risk. If he discovers you're watching him." "He won't. He's too confident. And I've spent 7 years learning how to be invisible around him." Monica studied her for a long moment. "All right. But if anything changes, if you feel unsafe, if he becomes suspicious, you call me immediately." "Understood." "Understood." The morning of her departure, Iris moved through the house slowly. She touched familiar surfaces. The kitchen counter she had chosen, the couch they had bought together, the photographs on the wall that documented years of a life she had believed was real. Cameron hovered, solicitous and eager. He carried her suitcase to the car. He kissed her forehead and told her to give Aunt Constance his love. He stood in the driveway waving as she pulled away. In her rearview mirror, Iris watched him turn back toward the house before she had even reached the corner. She drove in the direction of South Carolina for 20 minutes, then exited the highway and doubled back toward Decatur. The rental property Delia had arranged was a small cottage behind a larger house, private and quiet. Iris parked around back where her car couldn't be seen from the street. Inside, she set down her suitcase and looked around. A bed, a bathroom, a small kitchen. Everything she needed to disappear. Her phone buzzed. "Cameron, miss you already? Drive safe." Iris typed back, "Will do. Love you." Then she sat down at the small table, opened her laptop, and began to wait. The first day, Iris did nothing but watch. She had access to their shared bank accounts through the app on her phone. She had Cameron's calendar synced to hers, a feature he had set up years ago so she could keep track of his schedule. She had created a fake social media profile months ago, back when she first started noticing things she didn't want to examine too closely, and had quietly followed him and his colleagues. From the cottage in Decatur, she could see everything without being seen. By 10 a.m., Cameron had made his first purchase on the credit card. Flowers delivered to an address in Buckhead. By noon, he had blocked out his calendar for the evening with a single word, personal. By 2 p.m., he had posted a photo on Instagram, the skyline from his office, captioned "Building something great." And a woman named Sloane Whitfield had been the first to like it. Iris screenshotted everything. Delia came by that evening with groceries and wine. She sat on the edge of the bed while Iris showed her the day's documentation. "He's already going out tonight," Delia said. "You've been gone less than 12 hours. He was probably going out tonight whether I was there or not. He just would have lied about where. Doesn't that make you angry?" Iris considered the question. "It makes me focused. Anger would be wasted energy right now." Delia shook her head. "I don't know how you do it. If Marcus ever," she stopped herself, "I wouldn't be this calm. I'm not calm. I'm strategic. There's a difference. You keep saying that. Because I keep needing to remind myself." They ate dinner together, something simple that Delia had brought. Afterward, Iris walked her sister to the door. "I'm here if you need me," Delia said. "Anytime, day or night. You know that." "I know. And Iris, he doesn't deserve this much of your attention. I hope you know that too." Iris nodded, but she didn't respond. It wasn't about what Cameron deserved. It was about what she was owed. By the third day, the pattern had become clear. Cameron spent his days at the office, performing the role of dedicated attorney. He spent his evenings in Buckhead, performing the role of devoted boyfriend to a woman who didn't know she was being rehearsed into a part. He texted Iris every morning and every night, brief, affectionate messages that said nothing and meant less. Each text was a small performance. Iris had learned to read them like stage directions. "Hope Aunt Constance is doing better." Translation, "I hope you're staying away. Missing you tonight." Translation, "I'm with her tonight. Can't wait to see you when you're back." Translation, "I hope that's not for a while." She responded to each one with appropriate warmth. She mentioned fabricated details about her aunt's recovery, doctor's visits, physical therapy sessions. She let Cameron believe she was consumed with family obligations, too busy to think about what he might be doing at home. Meanwhile, she documented everything. Raymond Watts had given her a framework. Dates, amounts, patterns. Every transaction Cameron made, Iris logged. Every time his calendar showed personal or meeting private, or just a blank block where an explanation should have been, she noted it. When he posted photos, she saved them with timestamps. When Sloane Whitfield posted photos that could only have been taken in the apartment Iris now knew existed, she saved those too. The file grew thicker every day. On the fourth day, Iris made a decision. She had been watching from a distance, but distance had limits. She needed eyes on the ground, someone who could see things that didn't show up in bank statements or social media feeds. She called Delia. "I need you to drive by the Buckhead apartment tonight," she said. "Around 7. Just to see if anyone's there." "You want me to spy on your boyfriend?" "I want you to observe. There's a difference." Delia laughed bitterly. There's that word again. But she agreed. At 7:15, she sent Iris a text. "His car is in the parking garage." Her car too. Lights on in the unit. Didn't see anyone, but they're definitely both there. Iris saved the text. Another data point. Another piece of evidence that the life Cameron was building didn't include her. By the end of the first week, Iris had accumulated enough documentation to fill a binder. She met with Monica Vance again, driving to Midtown with a baseball cap pulled low, and spread the evidence across Monica's desk. Monica reviewed it methodically, her expression neutral. "This is good," she said finally. "The financial documentation especially. The spending pattern is consistent with someone maintaining 2 households. Raymond will be able to trace where the money is going." "What about the infidelity?" Iris asked. Monica looked up. "What about it? Does it matter? Legally? Georgia is an equitable distribution state for married couples. Since you're not married, infidelity is irrelevant to property claims. What matters is demonstrating your contribution to shared assets and his concealment of those assets. So the other woman doesn't matter. The other woman matters to you, and that's valid. But legally? She's a symptom, not a cause. Our case is about money, not morality." Iris nodded slowly. She had known this intellectually. Hearing it stated so plainly still stung. "What's the next step?" "We keep building. When you have enough, when we're certain he can't hide anything else, we file. Then discovery opens and Raymond goes to work." "How long?" Monica considered. "Another week or 2 of documentation would strengthen the case." "Can you maintain the distance that long?" "Yes." "And you're certain he doesn't suspect anything?" Iris thought about Cameron's texts, his casual tone, his obvious relief at her absence. "He thinks I'm taking care of my sick aunt. He's never been less suspicious in his life." Monica allowed herself a small smile. "Good. Use that." That night, Iris sat alone in the cottage and allowed herself to feel. She had been running on strategy for days, treating her emotions as inconveniences to be managed. But alone, in the dark, with no one to perform for, the feelings found her anyway. The grief was the worst part. Not for Cameron, she was beginning to realize she had been grieving him for years, slowly, in increments, but for herself. For the woman who had believed. For the future she had trusted was waiting. For the 7 years she had invested in a story that had never been real. She had been so careful, so accommodating, so willing to shrink herself into whatever shape the relationship required. And none of it had mattered. None of it had been enough. Because it was never about being enough. She understood that now. Cameron hadn't left because she failed at something. He was leaving because she had succeeded, had helped him become the man he wanted to be, and now he wanted a different woman to enjoy the results. A chapter that's closing. Iris lay in the dark and let the phrase wash over her. She didn't fight it anymore. She let it become what it was. Not an ending, but an opening. The closing of a chapter she hadn't written. The beginning of one she would. The second week began with a development Iris hadn't anticipated. She was scrolling through social media, doing her daily documentation when she noticed something. Sloane Whitfield had posted a photo from a restaurant. Nothing unusual, but the caption caught Iris's attention. "Celebrating the best news with my favorite person." The photo showed a champagne glass. On the table, partially visible, was a small velvet box. Iris enlarged the image. The box was open. Inside, unmistakable, was a ring. Size 6. She stared at the screen for a long time. She had known the ring existed. She had found the receipt. But seeing it on Sloane's hand, seeing the smile, the champagne, the celebration, made it real in a way that documents couldn't. He had proposed. While Iris was supposedly nursing her sick aunt, Cameron had proposed to another woman. She took a screenshot. She added it to the file. Then she called Monica. "He proposed," Iris said without preamble. "To the other woman?" "Yes." Monica was silent for a moment. "That complicates his narrative, if he tries to claim you two had already agreed to separate. A proposal to someone else undermines any argument that the relationship was mutually ending. Is that useful?" "It could be. How do you feel?" The question surprised Iris. Monica was not the type to ask about feelings. "I feel like I have more evidence," Iris said. Monica made a sound that might have been approval. "Good. Keep documenting. We're almost there." The proposal changed something in Iris. Not her strategy, that remained intact, but her understanding of it. Cameron wasn't just leaving her. He was erasing her. He was building a narrative in which she had never mattered, in which his success was his alone, in which the woman who had supported him through everything was simply a chapter that closed so the real story could begin. He was rewriting history. Iris decided she would not let him. She spent the next 3 days compiling a different kind of documentation. Not just financial records or social media posts, but evidence of contribution. Every email she could find where she had discussed their shared goals. Every text where Cameron had thanked her for supporting him. Every photo that showed them together during the years when he was struggling and she was the only thing holding him up. She called her mother. "Mama, I need to ask you something." "What is it, darling?" "Do you remember when Cameron was studying for the bar? When I asked you for a loan to help cover his expenses?" "Of course I remember. $3,000. He said he would pay it back. Did you keep records?" Her mother was silent for a moment. "You know I keep records of everything. I need them." "Iris, what is happening?" Iris closed her eyes. She had been avoiding this conversation, dreading the look in her mother's eyes, whether it would be pity or "I told you so" or something worse. "He's leaving me, Mama. And he's trying to take everything with him." "That man," her mother said, and her voice was hard in a way Iris had never heard before. "I will find the records. I will bring them to you. And then you will tell me everything." Mrs. Adiz Nduka arrived the next afternoon with a folder 2 inches thick. She was a small woman, Iris's mother, with the same careful eyes and the same stubborn chin. She had never liked Cameron, had never said so directly, but had made it clear in 1,000 small ways. Now, sitting at the small table in the Decatur cottage, she allowed herself to say what she had held back for 7 years. "I never trusted him. Too smooth. Too quick with promises. A man who talks that much about what he's going to do is usually not doing it." "I know, Mama. You loved him. I understood. But love should not make you blind." "It didn't make me blind. It made me patient." Her mother considered this. "Maybe too patient. Maybe. But that's done now." Mrs. Nduka opened the folder. Inside were years of records. The loan she had made to Cameron, documented with a signed note and canceled checks. The times Iris had borrowed money from her mother to cover household expenses while Cameron was in school. Letters and cards that referenced the sacrifices Iris was making, creating a paper trail of her contribution. "You kept all of this," Iris said, amazed. "I keep everything. You know this." "I thought it was paranoia." "Paranoia is wisdom that hasn't been proven right yet." Iris laughed despite herself. It was the first time she had laughed in weeks. Her mother reached across the table and took her hand. "You will survive this. You're my daughter. Survival is in your blood." "I know. And when you are done surviving, you will thrive. That is also in your blood." Iris squeezed her mother's hand and said nothing. Some things didn't need words. By the end of the second week, Cameron had stopped being careful. He posted photos from the Buckhead apartment without realizing the background revealed details he should have hidden. Furniture Iris had never seen, artwork she had never chosen, evidence of a life that had been built without her knowledge. He took Sloane to restaurants they used to frequent together, apparently unconcerned about running into anyone who might mention it to Iris. He changed his relationship status on Facebook to "in a relationship," thinking perhaps that Iris would never see it or no longer caring if she did. Iris documented all of it. She also noticed something else. Cameron's friend Derek Mullins, the one who had been receiving monthly consulting payments, had started posting cryptic messages on social media. Vague references to knowing when to step back and protecting yourself first. The kind of thing people posted when they were nervous about something but didn't want to say what. She mentioned it to Raymond Watts. "Interesting," Raymond said. "Men like Derek Mullins always have one eye on the exit. If he thinks there's trouble coming, he'll want to distance himself. Is that good for us? It could be excellent. Nervous people make mistakes. And nervous co-conspirators sometimes become cooperative witnesses." The third week began with a phone call from Cameron. Iris was sitting in the cottage, reviewing her documentation, when his name appeared on her screen. She let it ring 3 times, long enough to seem natural, short enough to seem attentive, before answering. "Hey, baby," Cameron said. His voice was warm, familiar, the voice of a man who had spent 7 years learning how to sound trustworthy. "Hey yourself. How are things?" "Good, good. Missing you though. How's your aunt?" "Hanging in there. The doctors say she's improving, but slowly." "That's good to hear." Pause. "So listen, I wanted to talk to you about something." Iris's heart rate quickened, but she kept her voice calm. "What's up?" "There's been some confusion with one of our accounts. The bank flagged a transfer, probably just a technical thing, but they want both of us to sign off on some paperwork." "What kind of paperwork?" "Just some verification stuff. Nothing major. I can scan it and send it to you if you want to sign digitally." Iris thought quickly. This was a test or a trap or both. Cameron needed her signature on something, probably something that would formalize his control over assets that should have been shared. "Sure," she said lightly. Send it over. I'll take a look. Great. I'll do that tonight. Cameron? Yeah. Is everything okay? You sound a little stressed. Pause. Too long. No, everything's fine. Just busy at work. You know how it is. I know. Well, don't work too hard. I won't. Love you. Love you too. She ended the call and immediately forwarded the conversation notes to Monica. Monica called back within the hour. Don't sign anything, she said. I wasn't planning to. When the documents arrive, forward them to me immediately. I want to see what he's trying to get you to authorize. What do you think it is? Based on the financial pattern Raymond has traced? Probably something that consolidates his control over the hidden accounts, or removes your name from something that should have it. So he's escalating. He's panicking. The engagement probably accelerated his timeline. He needs to have everything in place before he officially moves forward with the new life. What do I do? You stall. Tell him you're having trouble with the scanner, or your internet is down, or you want to review it more carefully before signing. Buy time without raising suspicion. And if he pushes? Then we know he's desperate. And desperate is sloppy. The documents arrived that evening. 3 pages, dense with legal language requiring Iris's signature in 4 places. She forwarded them to Monica without reading them carefully. She already knew what they would say, not the specific words but the intent. Cameron was trying to secure his position before she realized what he had done. Monica called back the next morning. These documents would effectively remove your interest in 2 investment accounts and a property in Buckhead. The apartment. Yes. He's trying to formalize his sole ownership before you have a chance to claim your contribution. So he knows I might have a claim. He knows enough to be worried. That's significant. A man who thought he had done nothing wrong wouldn't be asking for these signatures. What do I tell him? Tell him you're reviewing the documents with your financial advisor. Tell him you want to understand everything before you sign. Be vague about timeline. Make him wait. And if he gets suspicious? Then he gets suspicious. We're almost ready to file anyway. A few more days of documentation and we move. Iris ended the call and sat with the information. Cameron was worried. Cameron was making moves to protect himself. Cameron was no longer as confident as he had seemed. The chapter was closing all right, just not the way he had planned. She texted Cameron that evening. Got the documents. Reviewing with my financial advisor before signing. You know me, always careful. Should have an answer in a few days. His response came quickly, too quickly. Financial advisor? Since when do you have a financial advisor? Since I started thinking more seriously about our future. You're always saying I should be more involved in the financial stuff. A long pause. Then, that's great, baby. Take your time. But Iris could hear the tension beneath the words. She had introduced an unexpected variable. She had suggested that she was paying attention in ways he hadn't anticipated. The next few days were a careful dance. Cameron texted more frequently, asking about her aunt, asking when she might be coming home, asking if she had had a chance to look at those documents yet. Each message was casual on the surface, urgent underneath. Iris responded with matching casualness. Her aunt was improving. She would be home soon. The documents were complicated. She wanted to make sure she understood everything. Meanwhile, she continued documenting. Cameron's social media activity had shifted. He was posting less, liking less, engaging less. The public performance of his relationship with Sloane had grown quieter. Something had made him cautious. Or someone. On Thursday, Iris received an unexpected text from a number she didn't recognize. Is this Iris Nduka? I think we should talk. She stared at the message for a long moment before responding. Who is this? My name is Sloane. I believe we have something in common. Iris did not respond immediately. She forwarded the message to Monica. Do not engage, Monica said. This could be a fishing expedition. She might be testing to see what you know, or Cameron might have put her up to it. Or she might genuinely want to talk. Even if she does, anything you say could be used against you. Wait until we've filed. Then if contact makes sense, we can discuss it. Iris put the phone down and thought about Sloane Whitfield. She had seen the photos by now, the professional headshots on LinkedIn, the casual shots on Instagram. Sloane was beautiful in the way that money and attention made people beautiful. Polished, maintained, deliberately constructed. But looking at the photos, Iris didn't see a villain. She saw a woman who was probably being lied to as thoroughly as Iris had been. A woman who thought she was building something real with a man who had built something real before and walked away from it. The ring on Sloane's finger had not been earned. But Sloane didn't know that. Sloane thought she was the beginning of a story. She didn't know she was standing on the wreckage of someone else's. Iris saved the message and didn't respond. Some conversations would have to wait. On Sunday evening, Iris sat down with her complete file and reviewed it from beginning to end. The financial documentation filled a 3-inch binder. Bank statements, credit card records, transfer histories, property documents, every transaction she could trace, annotated with dates and context. Raymond Watts had added his analysis, mapping the flow of money from shared accounts into hidden ones, documenting the systematic concealment of assets that should have been joint. The personal documentation filled another binder. 7 years of text messages, emails, photos, and records. Evidence of promises made and broken. Evidence of her contribution to Cameron's education, career, and lifestyle. Evidence of the life they had supposedly built together. The social media documentation was a separate folder. Screenshots of Cameron's public relationship with Sloane, time-stamped and organized. The engagement announcement. The photos from the Buckhead apartment. The digital trail of a man who thought he was starting over but was actually just continuing a pattern. Iris looked at everything she had assembled and felt something unexpected. Pride. She had been underestimated her entire life. Too quiet, too accommodating, too willing to defer to others. People, Cameron included, had mistaken her restraint for weakness. They had assumed that because she didn't fight loudly, she wouldn't fight at all. They were wrong. She called Monica. "I'm ready." "You're certain?" "Yes." "Then we file tomorrow morning. I'll need you to come to the office to sign the paperwork. After that, the documents will be served and everything becomes official." "What happens then?" "Then he finds out that you know. And then we see what he does." Monday morning, Iris drove to Monica's office for the final time as a woman in hiding. The paperwork took less than an hour. Monica walked her through each document, explaining the legal theories they were pursuing, unjust enrichment, constructive trust, fraud, and the evidence supporting each claim. Iris signed where indicated, her handwriting steady. When it was done, Monica set down her pen. "I want to be clear about what happens next. Once we file, this becomes adversarial. Cameron will receive notice. He will hire an attorney, probably already has one based on the documents he asked you to sign. There will be responses, counterclaims, possibly attempts to settle quickly. I don't want a quick settlement." "What do you want?" Iris considered the question. "I want what I'm owed. I want the truth to be part of the record. And I want him to know that I was never as invisible as he thought." Monica nodded slowly. "Those are reasonable goals. We'll pursue all of them." The documents were served that afternoon. Iris didn't see it happen, but she imagined it. Cameron at his desk, perhaps, or in a conference room, receiving an envelope that would append everything he thought he had secured. The moment of confusion. The dawning realization. The understanding that the woman he had dismissed as a chapter closing had been writing her own ending all along. Her phone rang 3 hours later. "Cameron." She let it go to voicemail. He called again, and again, and again. The voicemail started calm, confused. "Iris, I just received some paperwork that doesn't make sense. Can you call me back?" Then they grew sharper. "This is a misunderstanding. We need to talk before this gets out of hand." Then desperate. "Please, Iris, whatever you think you know, just let me explain." She listened to each one. She saved each one. She didn't respond to any of them. That evening, she drove back to the cottage in Decatur and sat in the dark, watching her phone light up with calls she didn't answer. It was done. The quiet phase was over. Everything that came next would be loud. Cameron showed up at Delia's house 3 days later looking for Iris. Delia called her immediately after turning him away. He was frantic. Kept saying there had been a misunderstanding, that he needed to talk to you, that this wasn't what it looked like. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I didn't know where you were." "Which is technically true. I know generally but not specifically." "He didn't seem to believe me, but what could he do? Did he threaten anything?" "No. He was too focused on performing reasonableness." "I just want to clear this up. I just want to understand what's happening." That kind of thing. Iris closed her eyes. Cameron was still trying to manage the narrative, still trying to find an angle that let him control the outcome. "He'll contact my mother next," she said. "Already did. She told him to speak to your attorney and hung up." Despite everything, Iris smiled. Her mother was many things, but uncertain was not one of them. The next week was a blur of legal procedure. Cameron's attorney, a senior partner at a competing firm, Someone with enough prestige to signal that Cameron was taking this seriously filed a response. The document was dense with denials and counterclaims, painting Iris as a bitter ex-partner making exaggerated claims to extract money she wasn't entitled to. Monica was unimpressed. "Standard defense strategy," she said. "Deny everything, attack the plaintiff's credibility, try to make this about emotion rather than evidence. It won't hold up." "How do you know?" "Because we have the evidence. He's denying things we can prove with documents. That's a losing strategy." Raymond Watts had continued his work, and the results were devastating. Cameron's hidden accounts were not just hidden. They were structured in ways that demonstrated clear intent to conceal. The apartment in Buckhead, the transfers to Derek Mullins, the investment accounts, all of it formed a pattern that was impossible to explain as innocent financial planning. "He's been preparing for this for at least 2 years, Raymond said during their update meeting. "Long before you found the ring. The concealment started when his income increased substantially, when he started making enough money to hide. So he was always planning to leave. The evidence suggests he was always planning to be able to leave. Whether he would have actually done it without the other woman, that's a question I can't answer." Iris nodded slowly. It didn't matter anymore. What mattered was what she could prove, and she could prove enough. Derek Mullins flipped on a Wednesday. Monica called with the news, her voice carrying a rare note of satisfaction. "His attorney contacted us this morning. He wants to cooperate in exchange for being dismissed from any claims we might bring against him." "What does he have?" "Everything. Emails between him and Cameron discussing the asset structure. Records of the accounts he helped establish. And, this is significant, testimony that Cameron explicitly told him the goal was to protect assets from future claims." "Future claims meaning me. That's how any court will interpret it. Cameron told his financial advisor he was hiding money from you. That's intent. That's the ballgame." Iris absorbed the information. Derek Mullins had been paid to help Cameron erase her from their financial life. Now he was being paid, in immunity from prosecution, to help her put herself back in. What happens next? Discovery continues. We depose Cameron under oath. And we prepare for mediation if he's smart enough to pursue it. Will he be smart enough? Monica paused. "In my experience, men like Cameron are very smart about getting what they want, right up until the moment they're caught. After that, they tend to make decisions based on ego rather than strategy." Cameron called again that night. This time Iris answered. "Iris." His voice was careful, controlled, the voice of a man who had prepared what he was going to say. "We need to talk. In person. We're communicating through attorneys now. This is bigger than attorneys. This is about us. About our relationship. Our relationship ended when you proposed to another woman while I was supposedly nursing my sick aunt." Silence. Heavy, loaded silence. "You know about that." "I know about everything, Cameron. The apartment. The accounts. The money you've been hiding. The story you told yourself about me being a chapter that closes." More silence. Then, "Who told you?" "You told me. Every transfer, every calendar entry, every careful lie. You just didn't know you were speaking." "Iris, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want explanations or apologies or whatever speech you've prepared. I want what I'm owed. That's all. What you're owed. I built everything we have. You built nothing alone. I held us together while you studied. I paid the bills while you failed the bar. I co-signed the loans that made your education possible. I deferred my own dreams so you could pursue yours. You don't get to call that nothing." "I never said it was nothing. You said I was a chapter closing. Those are your words. Well, Cameron, this chapter is closed. But not the way you planned." She ended the call before he could respond. Her hands were shaking, the first time since this began that her body had betrayed her composure. Not from fear and not from sadness. From something else. Release. She had said what she needed to say. Not through attorneys, not through documents, not through careful strategy, but directly in her own voice. She had told him the truth about what he had done and who she was. The shaking stopped. Iris sat in the quiet cottage and breathed. The mediation was scheduled for a Tuesday, 3 weeks after the filing. Monica had prepared Iris carefully, walking her through what to expect. The formal setting, the neutral mediator, Cameron and his attorney on the other side of the table. The goal, Monica explained, was not to win an argument but to reach a resolution that reflected the evidence. "He'll try to negotiate down," Monica said. "His attorney will argue that your contribution was smaller than you claim, or that the assets were always intended to be separate. Our job is to counter with documentation. And if he doesn't negotiate in good faith, then we go to trial, which is more expensive and more public, but also more conclusive. Iris nodded. I'm ready for either. The mediation room was nondescript: beige walls, a long table, uncomfortable chairs. The mediator was a retired judge named Harold Foster, known for his impartiality and his low tolerance for theatrics. Cameron was already there when Iris arrived. He looked thinner than she remembered, older. The confidence that had always been his defining feature seemed diminished, hollowed out. He met her eyes across the table. She looked back without expression. Let's begin, Judge Foster said. The next 3 hours were a careful dismantling of Cameron's narrative. Monica presented the evidence methodically: the financial records, the hidden accounts, the testimony from Derek Mullins, the documentation of Iris's contributions over 7 years. Each piece built on the last, creating a picture that was impossible to dismiss as misunderstanding or exaggeration. Cameron's attorney pushed back, but weakly. He disputed dollar amounts, questioned the relevance of certain documents, suggested that Iris's contributions had been voluntary rather than induced by promises. But every objection was met with evidence, and the evidence was overwhelming. Halfway through, Cameron leaned over to whisper to his attorney. The attorney shook his head. Cameron whispered again, more urgently. The attorney's expression tightened. We'd like to request a brief recess, Cameron's attorney said. Judge Foster nodded. 15 minutes. When they reconvened, the tone had shifted. Cameron's attorney spoke carefully. My client is prepared to negotiate a settlement. We believe there are areas of agreement that could allow both parties to move forward without the expense and difficulty of continued litigation. Monica glanced at Iris. Iris nodded slightly. We're willing to discuss terms, Monica said. But any settlement must reflect the full scope of my client's contribution and the deliberate concealment of assets. What followed was 3 more hours of negotiation. Numbers exchanged, terms debated, provisions added and removed. Iris said little, letting Monica handle the specifics. But she watched Cameron throughout. He didn't look at her. He stared at the table, at his hands, at the documents in front of him, anywhere but at the woman he had tried to erase. By evening they had reached an agreement. Iris would receive a lump sum reflecting her contribution to the hidden accounts. She would receive a share of the property equity she had helped build. Cameron would acknowledge, in writing, that she had contributed substantially to their shared life and that his concealment of assets had been deliberate. It wasn't everything. It wasn't the years back, or the dreams deferred, or the trust that had been broken. But it was acknowledgement. It was justice, at least in the legal sense. Judge Foster asked both parties if they agreed to the terms. Cameron's yes was barely audible. Iris's was clear. Outside the mediation room, Cameron caught up with her. Iris, wait. She stopped but didn't turn around. I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I need to say it. He paused. I'm sorry. For all of it. Iris turned then. She looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since this began. The man she had loved. The man she had trusted. The man who had made her believe they were building something together while quietly constructing an exit. You're sorry you got caught, she said. That's not the same thing. That's not fair. Isn't it? You proposed to another woman while I was gone. You hid money for 2 years. You told yourself I was a chapter closing. When exactly were you going to be sorry if I hadn't found out? He had no answer. I hope you're happy, Iris said. I mean that sincerely. I hope whatever you're building with Sloane is real, and I hope it lasts, and I hope you never do to her what you did to me. But that's not my concern anymore. She turned and walked away. He didn't follow. The settlement funds cleared 2 weeks later. Iris sat in her cottage, still the cottage, not yet ready to move somewhere permanent, and looked at the number on her screen. It was substantial. Not enough to replace 7 years, but enough to rebuild. She called Delia. It's done, she said. How do you feel? Iris considered the question. Quiet. Not happy, not sad. Just quiet. Is that good? I think so. It means I'm not reacting anymore. I'm just existing. On my own terms. Delia was silent for a moment. You know I'm proud of you, right? The way you handled this. Most people couldn't have done it. I didn't have a choice. You had choices. You chose the hard one. The smart one. The one that got you here instead of destroyed. Iris smiled faintly. Thanks, Dee. Now what? Now I figure out what I actually want. Without him. Without the story I was telling myself. She moved out of the cottage at the end of the month. Her new apartment was small, smaller than the house she had shared with Cameron, but it was hers. Every piece of furniture was something she had chosen. Every decoration was something she wanted. There was no negotiation, no compromise, no deferring to someone else's preferences. It was strange at first to have so much space for herself. Iris had spent 7 years shrinking to fit into a relationship that was always more about him than her. Learning to expand again took time. She started with small things. She bought art she liked, even though Cameron would have called it unsophisticated. She cooked dishes she had always wanted to try but had never made because he wouldn't eat them. She stayed up late reading and slept in on weekends and ate breakfast at noon without apology. She also started thinking about nursing school again. The program she had deferred 7 years ago was still there, revised, updated, but fundamentally the same. She could afford it now. She could make time for it now. She could finally pursue the thing she had set aside to help Cameron pursue his. She requested the application materials and spread them across her kitchen table. For the first time in years, she felt excited about her own future. Delia came over for dinner one evening, bringing wine and opinions. "Have you heard from him?" she asked. "No. And I don't expect to." "What about the other woman? Sloane?" Iris shook her head. "She sent one more message after the settlement, apologizing, saying she hadn't known the full situation. I told her I hoped she would take care of herself. That was it. Generous of you. She's not my enemy. She's another woman who got lied to. That's not solidarity exactly, but it's something." Delia refilled their glasses. "So what happens now? You start nursing school, you rebuild your savings, you pretend the last 7 years didn't happen." "I don't pretend they didn't happen. They happened. They shaped me. But they don't define me anymore." "That's very mature." Iris laughed. "It's very practiced. I've been rehearsing that line for weeks." Delia grinned. "Well, it sounds good." 6 months later, Iris walked into her first nursing class and sat in the front row. She was the oldest student there, surrounded by women, mostly women, in their early 20s, fresh from undergraduate degrees, unencumbered by the complications that had delayed her. But she didn't feel old. She felt ready. The professor introduced herself, outlined the semester, and asked each student to share why they had chosen nursing. When it was Iris's turn, she paused. "I deferred this dream for 7 years," she said. "I helped someone else build their life instead of building my own. I don't regret supporting him, but I regret losing myself in the process. I'm here because I finally remembered that I matter too." The room was quiet. A few students nodded. The professor smiled slightly. "Welcome to the program, Iris." Her mother visited that weekend, bringing food and unsolicited advice. "You look different," Mrs. Nduka said, studying her daughter across the kitchen table. "Different how?" "Lighter. Less burdened." Iris considered this. "I think I stopped carrying something I didn't realize I was carrying. The weight of his expectations. The weight of trying to be what he needed instead of what I was. That man never deserved you. Maybe not. But I learned things from the relationship. About myself, about what I want, about what I won't accept anymore. That has value even if the relationship didn't." Her mother made a skeptical sound. "You are more forgiving than I would be. Forgiveness isn't about him. It's about me. I don't want to spend energy hating someone who's no longer part of my life." "Then what do you spend your energy on?" Iris smiled. "Building. Finally." She saw Cameron once more by accident, almost a year after the settlement. She was walking through Midtown, coming from a clinical rotation at the hospital where she was completing her training. He was coming out of a restaurant, business lunch probably, looking much as he always had. Confident, polished, successful. He saw her at the same moment she saw him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Cameron nodded. Not a greeting exactly. An acknowledgement. Iris nodded back. And then she kept walking. She didn't look back. She didn't wonder what he thought of her, or what his life was like now, or whether he ever remembered what they had been. Those questions belonged to a version of her that no longer existed. She had somewhere to be. The graduation ceremony was small. Just her nursing cohort, their families, a few administrators. But for Iris it felt monumental. She walked across the stage to accept her degree, her mother and sister cheering from the second row. She shook the dean's hand and smiled for the photograph and felt something click into place inside her. She had done it. Not despite everything she had been through, but because of it. The woman who had emerged from that relationship, scarred, yes, but also sharpened, was not the woman who had entered it. She was stronger, clear, more certain of her own worth. After the ceremony, Delia found her in the crowd. "You did it," Delia said, hugging her tightly. "I did it. How does it feel?" Iris looked around at the smiling faces, the proud families, the future stretching out before all of them. "It feels like mine," she said. "For the first time in a long time, something feels completely mine." That evening, Iris sat alone in her apartment. She had declined the dinner invitation from her mother, the celebration Delia had wanted to organize. She needed a moment alone. A moment to sit with what she had accomplished. The apartment was quiet. The city hummed beyond her windows. She could see the skyline glittering with lights, full of lives being lived in ways she would never know. She thought about Cameron briefly. Not with longing, not with anger, just acknowledgement. He had been part of her story. He had shaped her, changed her, hurt her, and ultimately freed her. Not through any intention of his own, but through the wreckage he had left behind. She had built something from that wreckage. Something real. She thought about the woman she had been when she found that ring receipt in his desk drawer. Size 6. Not her size. The moment when everything she had believed came crashing down. That woman had been terrified. That woman had wanted to scream, to confront, to demand answers. That woman had felt powerless. But that woman had also been smart enough to pause. To think. To document instead of accuse, prepare instead of react. That woman had understood, even in her darkest moment, that patience was not the same as passivity. That silence could be strategic. That the best revenge was not revenge at all, it was becoming someone who no longer needed it. Iris poured herself a glass of wine and lifted it toward the window. "To new chapters," she said aloud to no one but herself. She drank. And then she began planning what came next. Some stories end with the villain destroyed, humiliated, brought low in public view. This is not that story. This is a story about a woman who was told she was a chapter closing and decided to write her own book instead. A woman who discovered betrayal and chose documentation over confrontation. A woman who was underestimated and used it as a weapon. Cameron Shaw is still out there somewhere. Successful, probably charming, certainly moving through the world as men like him always do. Maybe he learned something. Maybe he didn't. It doesn't matter. His story is his own now, and it doesn't include her. Iris Nduka is out there too. Working as a nurse, helping people heal. Living in an apartment that belongs only to her. Building a life that reflects who she actually is, not who someone else wanted her to be. She doesn't think about him often. When she does, it's without the sharp edge of anger or the dull ache of loss. He was a chapter in her life. A long one, a painful one, but he was never the whole story. She knows that now. The rest is still being written. If you're watching this and you recognize yourself in Iris, if you've given years to someone who was quietly planning to leave, if you've been called a chapter closing by someone you thought was your forever, remember this. Your silence is not weakness if you're using it to prepare. Your patience is not passivity if you're gathering strength. Your absence is not surrender if you're building something they'll never see coming. You don't have to scream to be heard. You don't have to fight to win. You just have to be ready when the moment comes. And when it comes, you move. Not with rage. Not with drama. Not with the kind of noise that burns itself out before it can do any good. With evidence. With clarity. With the quiet certainty of someone who has done the work. That's how chapters close. That's how new ones begin. Before you go, share in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Your stories, your voices, they matter here. And if this story resonated with you, if you believe in quiet strength and strategic patience, if you know what it's like to be underestimated and what it means to prove them wrong, subscribe, share, come back. There are more stories to tell. And they're all about women like you.